Good morning. Look at all of you braving the rain to be here today. It's so good to see you. We welcome you. We welcome you whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever brings you here today. We are so glad to be together, whether you're gathered here in the sanctuary or whether you're joining us from home. But speaking of gathering here in the sanctuary, now we do have a special service today for our RE families and teachers, and then they'll be going to religious education classes today, which begin today. But because it's been nice and crowded in the sanctuary, are we glad about this? A special favor, if you are here, would you mind making sure you kind of scooch a little bit closer? Leave some end space for folks who might be coming in, and get a little cozy. Get a little cozy with one another. Terrific. I'm going to invite you back into a little bit of yeah, thank you. Because we want to make sure to thank everyone who's making today's service possible. Jane Branham, who's our worship associate, our choir, Dr. Les, Simon, all our ushers. And we want to give a special thank you to our religious education teachers and assistants, and to all our families and everyone who makes our congregational life possible. And so I want to invite you just to take a deep breath, to let the world fall away just a little bit as we gather together. And as we begin, we ask, as the author Sean Parker Dennison writes, "Spirit of love, help us understand that to be human is to be always learning, always growing, always incomplete. Let this knowing enlarge our compassion for ourselves and for others. Help us grow in our capacity to forgive and to accept forgiveness when we make mistakes, and in this way become more capable of loving ourselves and each other. And in this spirit, let us center and uplift our hearts through the gift of our opening music."
Thank you, choir. That was a great way to start. We welcome the Glenn family, Ann and Tabor, to light our chalice this morning. With words by Joanna Lupkin from Toward Repair of Relationship, This chalice is lit in honor of Yom Kippur, the Jewish holiday of atonement. May its flame call us to search our souls, sifting through the past year to see where we may have missed the mark, and may its strength help us take the actions that are within our power to make this next year more just, more loving, and more peaceful for our community and all humanity. Now, please rise in body or spirit as we sing hymn number 318, We Would Be One.
Good morning. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Today is indeed a special day. Today we recognize the volunteer leaders who will be serving in our religious exploration program this year. Because our children and our youth are not just the future, but they are the present. Together, we all have a part in raising them in our Unitarian Universalist village. The task of religious exploration is the work of a lifetime and work for us all.
We know that our children and our youth are connected and supported spiritually at UU Asheville because of the commitment of the individuals who serve in religious exploration. Our congregation, our community, and our world are stronger because our families are grounded in their Unitarian Universalist faith. So we take this time to honor the adults who accompany our children and our youth, those who teach and learn with them, guide and love them. RE leaders and assistants, please come forward to be dedicated. You can form 2 rows if you'd like.
Yeah.
Remember, let the more height-challenged folks be in front. Height-enhanced people behind.
Great people come in small packages. Wow. This morning, we share our gratitude with those who are serving as guides and companions in this faith journey. we ask you, the congregation, to participate in a call and response litany. And the people say, "This is your calling, but this is our work. Thank you for the gift of your service."
It is important for our children and youth to hear how deeply they are cared for and to know that they're a valued part of this congregation. They see you standing before them, and the children join us as the people say, "This is your calling, but this is our work. Thank you for the gift of your service."
It is important for our children and youth to know our Unitarian Universalist story, to carry our principles and values into the world, and to know that they can make a difference. And the people say,
"This is your calling, but this is our work. Thank you for the gift of your service." We honor the adults who say yes to nurturing the faith development of our children and youth, for they recognize the importance of this work. Leaders and facilitators, we are grateful for your service. May you remember that as you trek together with the children and youth, that you, too, are transformed and growing in your faith as well. We thank you.
and now comes the tricky you to come forward. There is a part for you also. And after that, we'll go out into our RE groups.
Unitarian Universalists, people of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. Together we care for the earth and work for peace in our world. Thank you. Now let's sing this beautiful crowd out. But before we do, we want to make sure that we invite any parents, especially if you're new or you're visiting and you're sending your kids to religious education exploration classes today. You can walk out with your children and meet their group's leaders, find out where to pick up your child after worship. Okay, congregation, let's do our music thing. We're going to sing As You Go. Isn't it amazing to see our joyful, huge religious exploration community? It is. I promise you, there are congregations all over the country who are drooling just a little, drooling just a little. We expect to invite many of the parents back into worship soon, but let's take a moment now for centering in meditation, prayer, and silence. Holy Spirit, name beyond names, source of peace and creative abundance, Today we hold in our hearts the survivors of the flooding in Syria, the earthquake in Morocco, the war in Ukraine. Our hearts are tender and open to all who suffer, wherever and however that suffering comes. We pause in our daily rounds to consider our own lives, where we have done harm, where there is a need for peace or for justice, how we might make amends and restore right relationship. We look to one another and to the peacemakers throughout history for guidance. We want to live in harmony with one another and with the entire interconnected web of life. May we remember the many kindnesses we have been offered and have offered along our journeys, and each day may we seek to be a blessing to the world. These things we contemplate now together in silence. Amen, Ashe, blessed be. And now is the time to acknowledge our joys or sorrows with a ritual of water and rocks. And for all that grieves our hearts, we add a little salt to brine the water in this vessel, seeded in each case with the water from our water communion. And for all that brings our hearts joy or celebration, we scatter flower petals to symbolize our happiness or our contentment. And if you're joining us online, we invite you to please share your joy or sorrow in the chat box. But if you are here in the sanctuary, please feel free to make your way to these center aisles and choose a rock that you slip into the water that best speaks to your joy or your sorrow. If you have shared a joy, know we rejoice with you. And if you have shared a sorrow, know you are held in love and care by this community. And we now add these last rocks for all the joys and sorrows of our community that are carried by those who are not present with us today, because no matter whether we are gathered or afar, we are one community.
A litany's refrain, a beginner's Tao Te Ching, and spider webs. First, I forgive myself, I forgive you, we begin again in love. That refrain from Reverend Rob Eller Isaac's Ritual of Atonement, spoken to each other in this sanctuary in years past, has been in my heart this week. I've been especially contemplating that first line, I forgive myself. Whether it's for, again, not trusting that Cam's careful driving means she really won't get too close to the edge, or blaming myself for still having foot pain because I didn't go to PT sooner, or another litany of failings. How do I forgive myself? In a recent episode of his podcast, Power for the Peaceful, a class in Taoism, retired Mars Hill professor Mark Mullinex talks about what he calls reversing. Neither to forget, nor to be absolved of our missteps. No judgment, deity. Reversing, to go back to the beginning, or as Les might say, let's try that verse again. When I reverse and remember who I really am, I return to the goodness in my core. Then, like the spider web repair I love to watch, the spider using, I just learned, up to 7 different types of silk, weaving one type clockwise and then reversing direction with a stickier type of silk, I can be rewoven into the original peace and harmony of the interconnected web of all existence. From there, I am able to become part of the we who begin again in love.
We're going to sing No Other People's Children. You have music, but the words will be on the screens. So let me just give you the roadmap. You will be singing at the midway point. So we'll begin with our soloist singing, and then the choir will sing the music that you'll be singing later on, but they'll be singing the first verse. And then when you come in, you'll be singing the second verse. Emily will give you a cue. She will invite you to join in. And then I'll give a big gesture so you know when to sing. We will remain seated for this song.
How did we get to this place where we can look at
That time when you have to preach with a lump in your throat. The 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are called the days of awe, or the days of repentance. The high holy season in the Jewish tradition is a time of solemn, attentive reflection on one's life, examining it to discover where one needs to ask or offer forgiveness. In the Jewish tradition, one does not come before God asking God's forgiveness on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, until one has first forgiven and been forgiven by the people in our lives. This is not insignificant, for it is during the high holy season that God opens the book of life to see what is written there, and then on Yom Kippur delivers a final judgment. And after this, the book of life is sealed until the days come again the following year. We are living in the days of awe, and what better time to ask ourselves, what is forgiveness? And to examine our own needs for this most powerful of human interactions. Now, there is an old saw about forgiveness. I'm sure everyone has heard it. The old saw sounds like this: forgive and forget. But to add an assumption of forgetfulness to the necessity of forgiveness is a profoundly problematic way of looking at the subject, an active impediment rather than an assist. And besides, it lacks the basic virtue of being true. Very few people actually do forget, even when they manage to forgive. So there's nothing much to recommend it, and many things wrong with it as a theology. When a matter is small, unless we are terribly damaged as emotional beings, we may very well forgive and forget. Now, I can't give you any examples from my own life because apparently I've forgotten them all. On the other hand, who worries about those? If the matter is small, so is the forgiveness that's required. Someone bumps into you on a lurching subway. Sorry, they say, and you answer, no problem. Leaving the subway, you never think of it again. Who cares? It's only those matters which do real damage to us that make forgiveness matter. And in these, forgetting isn't a reasonable part. More significantly, it's not a necessary part. We can forgive without forgetting. And most of the time, remembering is actually an important part of real forgiveness. Now, the author Philip Yancey talks about it like this. He calls it the unreasonable calculus of grace. He says that's what's inherent in forgiveness. So often, we are damaged badly at the hands of another person. Some of us can be damaged beyond repair of the body. And even if someone does come to us and says very deeply, very sincerely, I am sorry, it doesn't just magically undo the damage. But there is a terrible cost in refusing to forgive. The Buddha said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one getting burned. And this is true. Forgiveness may offer an incredible grace to the one who is forgiven, but most of all, it begins to heal the one who forgives. So, what is it that makes forgiveness possible? One thing is, it cannot be rushed. If you have been damaged, the truth is, you have to take time to heal. The story needs to be told. The true nature of the damage must be understood. And then most of all, the person who has been hurt must come to understand that the understand their own anger and possibly their desire for revenge, that clinging to the pain and suffering is an act of renunciation. It is to give away one's power. Healing and forgiveness actually can come under any circumstance. They are perhaps easiest, though not necessarily easy, when the offender sincerely apologizes and asks to be forgiven, and maybe they offer some form of restitution. That's a gift. That's a gift for both parties. But even when the offender refuses to accept responsibility, forgiveness is possible. It is an act of reclaiming one's power and one's place in the world. It is to be an actor in one's own healing and also to lift up oneself spiritually and emotionally. Dr. Frederick Luskin has spent his career working on the question of forgiveness, how to forgive. And for those who are stuck in needing to forgive, he offers a lot of advice, actually. I'm just going to share a couple of points. But he says, the work of forgiveness includes these essential pieces. Understand the harm that you have experienced. Tell your story to trusted loved ones who can hear you and support you. Make a commitment to yourself to do what you have to do to feel better. Forgiveness is for you and not for anyone else. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciliation with the person who upset you or harmed you, and it doesn't mean condoning their actions. What you are after is finding peace, peace in yourself. Amend your grievance story to remind you of the heroic choice to forgive. Become your own hero. To truly forgive is to rescue the most valuable part of yourself. Forgetting is just not a reasonable part of that equation. One of the most valuable aspects of human memory is its ability to help us avoid those things that can hurt or damage us. Remembering even the most painful things can allow us to work through the suffering and find new meaning or hope. It can cause us to understand our own strength. It can also allow us to protect ourselves in very important ways and to help protect those we love from the same or similar harm. For example, even if one comes to a place of forgiveness with someone who harmed us as a child, there is no wisdom in forgetting the risk and offering new children into the offender's care. Remembering is a part of healing too. It is the only safe and honest way that we can be in relationship again. Asking for forgiveness can be heart-rendingly painful. One possible outcome is that one's request may be rejected. It is a risk, and such a risk is the rightful consequence of our actions when we hurt or damage another human being. Yeah, we may be rebuffed, but it is right to ask for forgiveness and to offer what amends we can. Forgiven or not, we can now step forward and begin anew ourselves if we try. So, a writer now, John Carter, he tells a story of asking for and being forgiven. He tells it like this. I started getting into trouble when I was at school. I was shoplifting, burglary, that kind of thing. At 14, I was sent to a detention center for 3 months, after which I went straight back into petty crime. When I left school, I had no qualifications, and I joined a Hells Angels motorcycle club. By now, I was committing more serious offenses, making the lives of my mother and 4 sisters an absolute misery. But for me, it was all just a game of cops and robbers. I was in and out of jail and even committed a serious offense while on the run. That was when I hurled a table into the air in a pub and a young girl had her face badly lacerated. At one time, I ended up doing solitary at Dartmoor for 18 months because by that point, I'd become almost rabid and would attack anyone. It was then that a psychiatrist suggested that I go to the therapeutic prison, Grindon Underwood. At Grindon, we worked together in small groups. A lot of soul searching went on. I did exceedingly well in therapy, and I started helping others. And I started getting anxious about being released in case that I went back into crime. And it was then that my probation officer started telling me about restorative justice. She felt I'd reached a point where I could feel empathy and suggested that perhaps I should meet one of my victims. The question was, which one? There were literally hundreds. My probation officer asked me which offense stuck in my mind as the most damaging, and I immediately thought about that incident in the pub. The victim was tracked down, and amazingly, she agreed to meet with me. When I walked into the visiting room, I noticed that the girl had a prominent 6-inch scar on the side of her face. I had no idea who she was, and yet I felt this deep bond between us because we shared something that for her was, of course, completely, entirely negative. We both sat there and looked at each other. I could see she was full of rage. It was highly traumatic. Her father was clenching his fists. Her mother looked distraught. I was the first to speak, and for the first time, I found I could express how I'd felt at the moment of the offense. And it was the first time I was able to take on board the hurt that I'd caused. Then she took me through what had happened to her since that night and how it had affected her ever since. We both broke down and cried. Finally, I told her how remorseful I felt, and it was then, after a brief pause, that she said, "I forgive you. I hadn't asked for this and I didn't expect it, but by God, those words had a profound effect. They stopped me in my tracks and concentrated my resolve never to repeat anything like this." As for my victim, I think meeting me allowed her to put a face to her fear and reassured her. You know, that was in 1989. And every year that goes by is another year that I have not reoffended. The only person I have to thank for that is my victim, this survivor. She gave me an incredible gift. The truth is, people mostly take a middle road between forgiving and forgetting. If we aren't skillful at asking for or offering forgiveness in a healthy way, and very few of us are, we tend to move quickly to, it's okay, but secretly hold the incident in our hearts and nurture it along. It grows like a poisonous weed, and it changes not only our relationship with the one we feel harmed by, but also everyone else in subtle ways or significant ways. And similarly, we may say sorry when what we actually mean is, look, could you please drop this and can we act like it never happened? Now that is not an apology, and no reconciliation occurs. A common experience comes up in good relationship counseling. If one partner has an affair and both want to continue the relationship, then a simple "I'm sorry" cannot mend the relationship. Forms of reparation need to be taken thoughtfully, often with difficulty. On the one extreme is the partner who wants to say "I'm sorry," but means, look, could you just leave me alone about this now? And the other is the offended partner who says, I forgive you as long as you keep jumping through these hoops. In a real reconciliation process, there is a sincere apology on the one hand and work on forgiving on the other. And there's also a long exploration and examination of how the affair came to pass, what unmet needs were present, What opportunities for consummation? What genuine acts can the offender take that will make a difference, will make a partner feel more at ease, the one whose trust has been damaged? How can each person more carefully examine their own roles inside the relationship? How can the offender hear the pain of their loved one and understand it and accept responsibility for the actions that caused it? Often, one or both cannot do this, and the relationship ends. But the need for the one who was harmed to find a way to forgive and move on doesn't, just because the relationship ends. At the core, forgiving and being forgiven are never simple acts, quickly and easily done. They can be, however, moments of the most powerful transformation, leading to peace and strength and relationships more beautiful than any that were possible before whatever damage was done. A wise and anonymous person, in my experience, said, "To forgive is to set a prisoner free and to discover that prisoner was yourself." It is a hero's journey to offer or to ask for forgiveness. In these days of awe, as we tumble toward the Day of Atonement celebrated the world over, let us each consider our lives and our hearts. Let us look into the nooks and crannies or at the elephants in our personal living rooms and commit to the work of forgiveness. On this road, may we find the help of many friends who have traveled the road beside or before us. And so it is. Amen, Ashe, blessed be.
And now, would you please rise in body, voice, or spirit to sing hymn number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. As we come to the time of the work of the congregation, I want to take this opportunity to invite those who are visitors with us today to raise your hand or stand. Ushers have microphones to bring around to allow you to tell us your name and from where you're visiting. Do we have visitors this morning?
Good morning. My name
Good
is
morning.
Rebecca Blair Cole. I am from Eastern North Carolina and a friend of the Unitarian Coastal Fellowship in Morehead City. I've been going there for 33 years now.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Emily Wilson, and I am visiting from Seattle, Washington, to be with my dearest friend Jill. We met at a UU camp in 1986, 87? Amazing.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Christian, and this is my wife, Brianna. We're from Fletcher. We're locals to here, and we're really happy to be here.
Oh, welcome.
Hi, my name is Mary. I'm visiting from just a few blocks away. I actually lived in Asheville for quite a long time, and I'm here with my friends Deborah and Roger. Thank you.
Welcome.
My name's Haley. I'm from just up the road in Leicester, but I grew up in the church in Chapel Hill, and my partner and I are looking to find a new congregation.
Welcome. Thank you. And we invite all you and all of us to join together in Sandburg Hall after the service for coffee and discussion. Our announcements ran as slides at the beginning of the service, and they are recorded on the YouTube if you want to look at them again. They're also found in Thursday's e-news. If you don't receive the weekly e-news, inquire at the visitors table in Sandburg Hall after the service, and they can help you sign up. Our community plate partner this month is Transmission, whose support for non-binary and transgendered people in Western North Carolina includes their very interesting name change project. You can contribute by writing community plate in the memo line of your check. You can also donate online at their website, transmission.org, or through the donate button on the UUCA website. Please also note that there are still yellow t-shirts available. You want to have one in time for the Pride Festival at the end of this month. And there was something else.
That was mostly it. Make sure you've got it on your calendar. Show up.
Okay. Today's offering will now be collected and gratefully received. If this is your first time here, please let the collection plate pass you by. This service is our gift to you. Your presence is your gift to us. For the gifts of your faith and wisdom, your attention and presence, and your time and resources, we are thankful.
And we end this morning where we began, asking the Spirit of love to help us understand that to be human is to be always learning, always growing, always incomplete. May this knowing enlarge our compassion for ourselves and for others. May it help us grow in our capacity to forgive and to accept forgiveness when we make mistakes. And in this way, we become more capable of loving ourselves and one another. And now, please rise in body or spirit as we share our special UU Asheville closing song, after which we hope you'll join us in Sandberg Hall for coffee and fellowship.